Welcome back to Out of This World. I'm Jamie Hanshaw, and Courtney's back. Courtenay Turner, our resident UN commentator, expert, historian, whoever. Whenever I want to talk about the weirdness of the UN, I always call Courtney because she has been covering. Also, she did a show a couple weeks ago about the 2024 Summit of the Future, where they were making a couple predictions, and uh, now that has happened, and she is here to share with us what all went down at the UN. How are you, Courtney?
I'm doing well, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
I'm pretty good. While we were all distracted by the diddler, the UN went and passed a bunch of global digital compact for the future, or the
Yeah.
shared digital future, right?
And their pact for the future and their declaration for the future generations, which was like all about education and
Yes.
really indoctrination. But yeah.
So you said in your previous show that this was a stepping stone towards building the AI world society. Now, I talk about AI from the perspective of like replacing women with sex bots and robo companions, uh, AI fleshlights, stuff like that. But that's because this is a weird show. But I always like to have on
It's
experts.
all relevant though.
It
Yeah.
is though, like it's
Yes.
not just crazy tinfoil hat stuff. It's actually coming to, your next door neighbor is going to have a robo wife probably within 10 years.
Yes.
So, back on Earth though, can you tell us more about what the Global Digital Compact is, and why do you think that this is,
Building the AI
opening
world.
the door for AI?
Yeah. So, okay. The Global Digital Compact is this agreement where they're trying to create basically complete control over the internet. And it's all under the guise of things that are very lovely sounding, like we don't want misinformation, we don't want hate speech, we want inclusivity. And when they talk about inclusivity, they talk about we don't want anybody left behind. This kind of reminds you of like the no child left behind. No one left behind is just code for communism. It means they're gonna reduce it to the lowest common denominator. But when they talk about how they need to increase the inclusivity, it's very similar to what they were doing with the WHO pandemic treaty that they
Hmm.
reneged to agreements because they didn't want to have to actually ratify them. So they were talking about how one of their main justifications for doing that treaty was that they thought it was very unfair that all of these underdeveloped countries didn't get the vaccine or the jabs. Yeah. So they thought it was very unfair. And so even though all the statistics show that these people were suffering from less adverse reactions and they were actually faring better, they felt it was very unfair, and they wanted to make sure that in the future they could ensure that whatever experimental pharmaceuticals they come up with, that they can be sure that everybody has access to them. So this
Hmm.
is kind of what they're talking about with the internet. They're saying it's very unfair that there are people in the world who don't have access to the internet, and they don't have access to the pocket computers, otherwise known as cell phones. And part of the reason they're very concerned about this is because they want to have a well-being economy where everybody has access to the digital economy that they're trying to put forth, otherwise known as
Hmm.
these. Um, and
Okay, okay. I'm
yeah,
seeing
yeah.
a picture now. Yeah.
Yeah, so they have to lay all the groundwork, right? So this is
Yes. For
incrementalism.
a
They're
one world currency
yes.
linked to the digital market
Yes, and
space. Yeah.
and they also talk about the what else was in there? I don't know if I have this in front of me. I wish I did, but they actually lay out, I might be able to find the picture and read it. But they actually lay out like the 17 sustainable goals
Hmm.
and what they mean in the Global Digital Compact, because they're not exactly the same in the Global Digital Compact. They have
Mm-hmm.
like different meanings, and it's all referencing like the digital realm. But reason I think this is paving the way for AI is because they keep saying they're behind on their 17 Sustainable Development Goals,
Mhm.
and therefore they won't be able to reach Agenda 2030. And they need to reach Agenda 2030 before they can get to, they don't call it Agenda 2045, but of course, Agenda 2045 is the AI World Society. It's the centennial of the UN. So that's in 2045. This is also when Ray Kurzweil, he wrote his
Mhm.
book, The
Mhm.
Singularity is Nearer. And
Mhm.
when does he predict that the singularity is going to be? He says in 2045. So it just
Oh,
happens
wow.
to coincide with the AI World Society. And the AI World Society is like, it's literally the metaverse on steroids.
Uh-huh.
So they predict like everybody will now be inside this virtual world where everything is interconnected. They talk about Ukraine being the central locus, it's the central hub for this AI World Society that's
Mhm.
going connected to all these other grids, these nodes around the world. And they do these symposiums where they talk about how we have to rebuild Ukraine. It sounds a little bit like tear down so we can build it back better. But
Yeah.
yeah, they say that they're decimated by the war. So we have to send them lots of support and finance, and we have to rebuild it. And then they talk about how it is going to be the central hub where we connected to all the 15-minute cities, C40 cities, smart cities around the world. And then they talk about things like we'll have a digital twin. All human governments will be supplanted by AI governments. So AI is going to replace all governments. Of course, we aren't going to have nation states anymore, so those governments aren't really all that relevant anyway. But AI will also dictate corporate policy, which many of these corporations are supranational entities. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I could
Because
go on. The one other thing I'll just say before I go on, because this is so creepy, but they
uh-huh.
talk about 6G and how 6G will be the interface to, of course, it uses humans in order to harness the power.
Uh-huh.
Uh, and that they've released the studies on that, like University of Amherst, Massachusetts. But they also talk about how 6G is going to be what is used to connect the Internet of Things and Internet of Bodies to the Internet of Nanobio things. So they'll have biometric sensors all throughout us. And
Mhm.
yes, this will be connected to everything. But it's all under the guise of they're going to help us. And, they'll know if we have not taken our medicine today, and they'll be able to, help us so that we can take more.
And all this coming from, the affiliated NGO Lucius Trust, former Lucifer Publishing Company,
Yes.
talking about channeling lights and beings and ascended masters and as woo-woo as you could possibly get.
Yes.
The these are the delegates that are the world leaders that are supposed to be hashing out all of our complex problems. And the problem now is just humanity, right? So we can't
Yeah.
govern ourselves.
No.
We can't be trusted to keep peace. Everything's popping off. This is a weird job because even 10 years ago, we would wait weeks and weeks for something to happen, some
Mhm.
awards show or some celebrity scandal or like someone post a Baphomet or just some like we had our like decoding goggles on waiting for
Right.
days to get like some kind of esoteric thing. But now it's just boom, boom, boom every day.
And
So
it's in your face.
it's so crazy. And you were talking about this with your show. I forgot the lady's name, that doctor that does Dangerous Dames. Can you
Oh,
remember?
Dr. Lee Merritt. Yeah.
Yes, very smart lady,
Yes.
Lee Merritt. So I watched your all show and talking about America's sovereignty because they're gonna say we're too warlike. Okay, so it's either going to be aliens save us from nuclear war, right? Or
Yes.
um the AI. We have to surrender all of our rights. So first, America has to surrender the sovereignty to the UN. Did that happen this week?
So essentially it did. So what they call it complex global shocks. And they were saying how Gutierrez would say that, we have these global, he would use it synonymously with pandemics, like complex global shock or global pandemic. But the idea is that, anything that could be a super stressful moment it doesn't even have to be globally. They said it could be anywhere. And of course, it's like kind of arbitrary because they could just decide we're incurring this global, shock. And they said any kind of global shock that now the UN has, they call it the UN 2.0. That's what this Pact for the Future was all about, was UN 2.0, which now strengthens the power of the UN. And they don't say global government, they use the term global governance because
Mhm.
somehow that's supposed to be more palatable to those of us who do not want a global government.
Right.
Um, but they say that in those cases, the UN now has the power, and they say they're finite, but we saw how finite the powers were, in 2020. So, we see the lasting effects of that, but they say it's finite, and then they could, exercise whatever measures they feel fit,
Mhm.
because these are, emergency powers essentially. So essentially, they're basically saying that they could institute like global martial law if they wanted to.
Right. So I was just going to ask you, this is like martial law, but for everyone,
For everyone.
planet.
Hmm.
Right.
They don't use the term martial law, but they say they have finite, uh, infinite powers
Mhm.
essentially to do
And
with it.
these global shocks, are very much like trauma-based mind control,
Mhm.
um, like on a mass scale.
Yes.
And just this week, we had what, the hurricane destroying North Carolina.
And you know what nobody's talking about with the hurricanes? So the area where the hurricane hit is like a lithium gold mine.
Hmm.
And what is the lithium power? It powers the electric vehicles, it powers the all of the cards,
Hmm.
it our phones, everything, all the chips, right?
Hmm.
And what are they going to need? But it's basically like the semiconductors are all powered by lithium. So
Hmm.
what are they going to need for the AI world society? I think it's very interesting that with the area in Hawaii also, right? That was also very rich.
Oh, right, with the
Yeah.
fires.
Yep.
And so now there's only like one way in and one way out of that really crucial mine. Is that true?
Of the in Hawaii or in
No, in North Carolina.
yeah. Eh,
Yeah. And FEMA is not helping.
no.
Um,
And the government in general is not helping, but they're saying that we have to send like $16 billion to Ukraine, and to fund all these wars, but they're not helping because we can't help the people here.
and this is such a disaster. I mean, people are still missing. 600 people, they said, have been killed by the flood, and 100 more people missing. People are without food and power for days and days and days. No one's helping them.
And
Um,
water.
no water. Um, People have reported that their tires are getting slashed.
I hear the
So
crime has gone like through the roof. Yeah.
they locked everyone out of all of the major places where you could get resources like Walmart, Target, like the big stores that have lots of food and water. The
Yeah.
police are guarding that and not allowing anybody to have any, you know, necessities.
Yeah.
So it's just so crazy. Like, I wonder when people will just put down the pen and stop paying into this system that hates you and sends all your money away and is ruining the country, and we have to pay for it, right?
Yeah, that would be good.
So if you want to do anything, just like stop writing them checks.
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
all for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
So we pray for the people in Asheville, especially, and in North Carolina and in East Tennessee. This was a crazy. I mean, we haven't done any shows on weather modification, but I definitely think that's a thing.
I thought it immediately. I was like, nothing about this seems natural.
No.
Nothing about this seems natural.
And what's so crazy is like you would never think a hurricane would hurt you in Appalachia.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Way
Nothing
up there.
about this.
That's the last thing you would ever, be scared of. So people just went to bed that night not thinking that they're going to be flooded, and then
Yeah.
you get swept away. So, okay, so this is one of the future shocks that we're talking about. man-made disasters or manipulated things that would have not been so bad, but then they can amp them up, right?
Right. Yes.
So, and then again, the whole Hollywood P. Diddy scandal, here's another shock. All
Yes.
of their idols are falling. Can you think of any other weekly shocks just this week?
Um,
Oh, we're gonna talk about that in a second, but the whole Archangel Michael stuff.
oh yes. I don't know if that would be a shock, but it's definitely set up quite a ruckus. It's
It's not a shock, it's more of a splinter,
yes, he's
right?
definitely a splinter. It's that, and that's what it's designed to do.
Yeah.
It's definitely designed to. Although I would say, didn't we have another assassination attempt of Trump pretty recently? I would
Oh,
say that
at the golf
that's
course?
definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of a shock.
Right. So this is a funny job to have because you're like, do I report on Diddy? Do I report on UN? Do I report
Right.
on like what's going on in the hurricane and weather modification? But so we're focused on the UN right now because
Yeah.
we've done all these shows, but
Well, it's really funny that you say that because I go through this like every week. I do this radio show and I'm always like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. And my fiance always laughs at me because he's like, there's a million things to say. And I'm like, I know, but I'm like, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Like, there's too much
yeah.
to talk about. And then I always prepare a show. I did this for my speech at Freedom Fest. We drove to East Tennessee, it was right outside of Knoxville. So we
Mhm.
drove back and, it was like with all the weather. It was pretty intense, but we were okay. And actually, for my speech, it stopped raining, but for those 15 minutes. But I had 30 pages of notes for a 15-minute speech. There's just no way. There's too much to cover. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm always feeling this. Yes.
There's way too much to cover now, and now you can't even trust the sources.
No, you can't.
So let's wrap up UN and then we'll talk,
Okay.
we'll gossip a little bit
Oh,
about
gossip.
people who will never hear this show. Um,
Okay.
so they're talking about transforming the global government, right?
Yeah.
And obviously this is AI, this is the singularity that you mentioned. So in Masonry, I was reading and I came across this nugget that I had about 10 years ago and I forgot about, and I came across it again in my notes and I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. But basically Freemasonry, one of their main symbols is the beehive because they are a hive mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the purpose of these rituals is to make men into more of a hive mind of people, that work as one thing.
Yeah.
So we're seeing all of these secret societies, all of these mystery schools, the modern Freemasonry is working, and the great work is towards the Borg,
Yes.
right? From
This
Star Wars, Star Trek.
Yeah, no, this is it's bringing Teilhard de Chardin's vision of the noosphere to fruition. I mean,
Mhm.
I think that's literally what the AI World Society is. So there's a group, it's essentially a cult. It's called the Evolutionary Leaders, and Bruce Lipton is one of these. He's a like biologist, but he's an evolutionary leader, and he talks about, I probably do have it in here, a picture. And it looks exactly like the Hegelian dialectical spiral. They love their spirals. I knew we talked about the cosmoerotic humanism and Barbara Mark,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Her spiral. So this is his spiral. And
Oh,
it's he talks about how we start off as bacterium, right? And then we evolve to the amoeba. And he says the amoeba are so intelligent because they have more membrane. And now the membrane is where they collect their information, which makes them intelligent. And then, of course, we've got humans, and they're super intelligent because they're this complex, like multicellular organism. So we have all this surface area of membrane. But he says now we're kind of at this crossroads where we can evolve or die. And
mhm,
so if we choose to co-create, then we can co-create this and evolve to create
mhm,
this organism of humanity. And the reason I bring it up is because what does he say the membrane of this super organism of humanity will be? It's the internet.
mhm,
So the internet is going to be that membrane that will give us the intelligence. And so, of course, this is the noosphere, right? It's the shared Hyborg mind. Yeah.
Do you, this has something to do with Neuralink, don't you think?
I do think so. I do think Neuralink, but I think that it's not just Neuralink. So I think, they're a big fan of a lot of their I do think they're dialectical kind of options. So you have and they're also decoys because the Neuralink, the reality is you have to opt into the Neuralink,
Mhm,
right? Like how many people are really choosing? There are way more people than I would like to see who have already opted. I think it's over 100,000.
mhm,
It's not just the Neuralink, like the BlackRock has theirs. I forgot what it's called, but it's some sort of, it's very similar. It's the same thing. And actually a lot more people have done the BlackRock one. Uh,
mhm,
Elon's Neuralink. Um, but they have the technology that really without even chipping, that can put us into this like cybernetic feedback loop.
mm.
Um, and a 6G, I mean, they can do it pretty
Do
easily.
do you think the stabbies have anything to do with that?
So I do. I wrote I can't say what's going on with them, the ones that were, the iteration of 2021 in the West. I don't know. I can't, I know they're showing all those interesting videos and pictures, but I really don't know what those are. I mean, there's just
Mhm,
not enough evidence for me to have like a definitive kind of commentary on that. But
mhm,
what I will say is I wrote an article in 2021 about shedding and potential fact, and I wrote it as a speculative piece. It had 39 sources in it. So when I say speculative, I didn't pull it out of my butt, but
mhm,
but I said, this is just piecing together data points, and I can't say, with certitude that this is what's actually occurring.
mhm.
However, in that article, I cited a study that was done in Australia on self-disseminating uh, injections,
Yeah.
uh, and now they're publicly very transparently saying they're doing a rollout, on another island that is using self-dissemination technology. And this is in Japan. And
Mm.
they're about to roll it out. And this is very public and very overt. This is not a experiment, a covert research project. This is where they're saying you will have no options, but you either take it or you will be, affected.
Have you seen those like leaked videos of people from like the Department of Defense and stuff talking about how they can remove your beliefs in God by
I have, yep.
different injections?
And this was Gates, right? Bill Gates
Yeah,
was
and this was a while ago too.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I think that there's reason to give credence to it. I know a lot of people like kind of brush it off as but what they really want with this hype, it's part of why they have to create a one world religion, right? And this
Mhm.
one world religion is this theosophical soup where they accept everything except for Christianity and traditional Judaism. And of course, Blavatsky herself, who was one of the founders of Theosophical Society in 1875, she says that we welcome, mystical Judaism like Kabbalism, but we are very opposed to traditional Judaism and, of
Mhm.
course, diametrically opposed to Christianity. And there's a very good reason for that. They want this kind of a blending of these other religions so that they can put people into, a Hyborg mind.
Well, now you've got the Pope talking about all religions lead to the same place.
Hmm.
So that's one step in that direction.
Yes.
And then you have some weird stuff going on in America before this election.
Yes.
Lots of oh man, I don't even know how to talk about this stuff.
Uh,
It's like I know
well,
some of these people.
you what? You
Just
know
because
what?
like I know some of the people and it's like this is
Oh
getting
yeah.
so weird. Okay, so first they
Well,
have to give you a different definition of what God is
yes.
before they can take it away altogether, right? Because if God is everything, then God is nothing,
Yes.
right? It
Exactly.
doesn't even make
Yes.
sense. Um, so they're urged to formulate this plan, and here's this mural that they put on their website about the esoteric workers and their visualization, their group visual hive mind group visualization, right?
Yes.
So there's the mural with some kids. I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And they say esoteric workers recognize that the mounting crisis in the world reflect a deeper spiritual crisis as the forces of separateness how do you even say that? Separateness.
Separateness.
Yeah.
Separateness.
Manifesting in national and corporate self-centeredness and materialism continue to be a major driving force in human affairs. The situation is acute as divine potencies of light and love and power pour into human consciousness, fueling an ever-deepening sense of synthesis. So this is what they're doing. It's always one world, right? One. Everything
Well,
is
they're now talking about synergistic democracy. That's a new like term that they're
yeah.
a methodology that they're trying to impose. So this is
Look, I
yeah,
turned
this
red. What happened in my camera? I don't know
oh
what
weird.
happened. Yeah. Okay, anyways. Um, so they say this environment reflects an important moment in humanity's ongoing response to divinely inspired urge to formulate a plan with a capital P.
Mhm.
Key
The plan
features,
of love and light.
yeah.
The plan of love and light workout.
So they said the cycle of conferences visualization initiative is designed to support the will to build a spirit of synthesis into the world and see major global conferences, blah, blah, blah. And then I was reading down this actual prayer that they have of this visualization. Now, the last two shows we did, we talked all about Theosophy, right? And the light workers,
Mhm.
the hidden masters, right?
Yes. Yep. The goodwill servers.
Yes, the esoteric hidden masters who are forging a new international consensus.
Yes.
Um, and let's see. The spiritual effort for the first time in history is to bring all of them as functioning groups under the direct impact of the energy which motivates and actuates that place where the will of God is known and the purposes of a divinity are defined and projected. This means that each of the coming world conferences will have a greater and far more extensive effect than would otherwise be the case. This is from the externalization of the hierarchy.
Hierarchy. I knew it. Like as you're reading it, I'm like, this is Alice Bailey.
Yeah. So their goals are to link up with the souls of all fellow servers who are meditating on the summit of the future and to visualize a tide of lightened energy pouring down from the center where the will of God is known and pouring into the center humanity. Imagine the whole group sounding the affirmation of the will, capital W, together. And then they say, or they chant, in the center of the will of God I stand. Naught shall deflect my will from his. I implement that will by love. I turn towards the field of service. I, the triangle divine, work out that will within the square and serve my fellow men. Is this giving you any red flags? Because you actually mentioned something super deep. You said this is a Pythagorean cult.
Yeah.
And if you are trying to make a Pythagorean cult, you would probably say all is one because their god is the monad, right?
Yeah. So the reason I say it's a Pythagorean cult is because the spiral of Theodorus is so that spiral starts to overlap. So we showed the Hegelian dialectical spiral. I think of it as a Gnostic Jacob's ladder. I know that may seem kooky to people, but really that's what it is because Haven
Mm,
is how you go up the rungs of the ladder. So they're teaching you
yeah,
that's the theurgy, right? So that
yeah.
you can become God and then you can co-create. And the Theodore spiral, the dialectical overlapping of that spiral is at 17. And so, what are their 17 sustainable development goals? There's a
Mm,
reason there's 17 of them.
mhm.
And yeah, so I had made the joke that, they were the because Michael Fallon had posted something about like angles. I know somebody just did a typo and he was like, well, actually, worshiping angles is a little bit more Pythagorean than, they were talking about angels.
Right.
Just typed it, and I said, well, don't undermine that Pythagorean cult though, because the Theodore spiral is running the UN, and it literally is.
Yeah. And so what do you make of the triangle divine?
So I think Well, they talk about, and this ties right into Archangel Michael, right?
Mhm.
So Bailey, Blavatsky, a lot of these theosophists, they talk about how the Archangel Michael really represents Satan or Hermes Trismegistus.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So he was Greek god that they worshipped, and he was the god of trickstery. He was the kind of magician, if you will, the sorcerer.
Hmm.
And so I think when they're referring to, they also talk about the triangles as being the godhead. So it's, gives them the divine power. And of course, we see this in pyramids, symbols. So I think that when they talk about God, they're talking about Satan. And I mean, I know again that sounds like, you're projecting onto them, but Blavatsky herself has said it so many times. I don't have all the quotes right in front of me, but I mean, like if you read Blavatsky, she says that because of course this is a Gnostic worldview. They believe that God was this, evil God that has limited man's knowledge. And really, it's the Lucifer, the light bearer, who's going to give them the gnosis. And that's the way that they can become gods and they can become one. So when you talk about the monad, the Theosophists believe that we came from source. And so that's, the nature represents the source, and the whole purpose of human experience is to return to source. But if you look back in ancient Greek, they would talk about the undifferentiated all. And this is why they have to, erode all boundaries. This is why they create the Theosophical soup, where all religions are the same. They all roads lead to one.
Hmm. The Pope just said,
Yes, yeah, that's what
right?
I was referencing.
The Pope just said, and now we have the Donald Trump posting the prayer to Archangel Michael, which is
Yeah.
a Catholic prayer. Um,
Yes,
I mean, we do in our church, we believe in Archangel Michael is a real
sure.
thing and not the devil. We don't pray to angels and saints. We ask them to pray for us,
Right,
right?
right.
Um, so it's getting
It's getting
overlappy. It's
a
getting
little weird.
sticky and like so weird trying to pull apart. And this is how we knew it was going to be in the end times, right? Like the Antichrist is going to be deceptive. He's going to be somebody that everybody loves and worships and is on their side and is team humanity or whatever. Like the Antichrist is going to say stuff like that. So it's just really interesting to watch people fall for things over and over and over and multiple things, and you never develop any kind of critical thinking or suspicion. It's just like one thing after another that they fall for.
Yes. So the Archangel Michael op, I would call it an op. I don't know if that's too bold to say, but I would call it an op. That's what it looks like. And I
Yeah.
think it's been brewing for a really, really long time. And I think they've been trying to rope Trump into this op. So there's many like facets of this op, at least from my view.
Mhm.
And this kind of came into very clear vision for me when I was at Constance Cumby's house.
Mm.
And I know this is just like a feeling, so I can't go too much on it, but sometimes feelings are really strong and you can't really ignore them. It's like you get a really strong intuition about something. And I was in her basement and she's laying out this whole plan, well, of how Trump is the Antichrist.
Mhm.
And I just felt like a black cloud swallowed me because I could see the off just being laid out and how she was targeted to help funnel this.
Mhm.
So what she kept telling me is there are these books that there's a minimum of 10 of them are she kept saying, this is required reading. And so she kept giving me all these books and she said I'll give you a minimum of 10 on Trump being the Antichrist. And of course she really believes this, but I'm thinking, wow, this is so elaborate that they've been built in order for this many books to have been written on this subject. Like who's even planting the seed, right? Like people don't just come up with this idea 10, 20, 30 years ago that Trump is somehow going to
So,
be
okay,
the Antichrist.
just to
Sorry,
clarify this
back
for
up
the
people.
listeners, Constance Cumby is an author who wrote many books, one including Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow that I covered on Rockfin about the UN and the creation of the UN and how the rainbow is not necessarily a symbol for alternate lifestyles. It's actually the seven rays of Theosophy. right?
Yes.
So when you see this rainbow everywhere, this is when Theosophy has conquered, um, the Western world with mysticism.
Yes.
And so Theosophy is Luciferian, Gnostic. It's a lot of things.
Yes.
And
Alchemical,
alchemical,
hermeticism, right?
yeah.
And hermeticism has the seven principles also. Although there's the unspoken principle, I did a show covering this, of care. We call it care.
Mhm,
Um, and this is it's kind of similar to their first principle of mentalism, but it's
mhm,
like wherever your attention goes, that, manifestation follows.
mhm,
And I was talking about it because there is an unofficial sustainable development goal of zero. And there's this global public relations firm that has suggested they already do PR for the UN, but now they're talking about doing an official merger. And they've proposed this like unofficial development goal of zero. And zero makes a lot of sense, right? Ground zero, it's the year zero, it's a great reset. This is so zero, but zero is also holistic. And that's a big theme for the UN. And what is this unofficial goal? It's the goal zero is the sustainable development goal of joy. And I thought this was very interesting because I think it's tied to this hermetic principle, the eighth hermetic principle that's unofficial of care, because it's care about joy, but it's also tied to the Kamala Harris Walls campaign. They keep talking about joy. They're running on this like campaign of joy, and it's very reminiscent of the Nazi Germany strength through joy.
mhm,
And that was all about like luxury and like cruises and vacations in this very tough time. And it was, of course, a propaganda campaign. And so I just think all of it is, I think it's related, but it's
mhm.
interesting.
I think so too. Okay, because we were trying to make this thread. So Theosophy, and the first time you ever hear things like law of attraction
Yeah.
and everything that came out in
Secret.
the 2000s, The Secret and What the Bleep Do We Know, all that came from Isis Unveiled.
Yep.
And so Theosophy becomes the UN, and it's all about one world religion, syncretic religion.
Yeah.
And then the Pope just says this.
Yes. I can't find I like mocked him, but I wrote underneath, I was like, so it's really not all about magic. And I remember what else I said, because your last tweet is a little misleading. You're not really guiding us into this like dark magic. I don't remember the rest of what I said.
Right.
But yeah.
So, and then we have this visualization of light and the will of God, but their God is actually the Antichrist. And now we've got Archangel Michael
Yes.
powers uh seething into the right wing. And I just saw that they bought 33 billboards
Oh boy. 33.
with Michael and Trump on them in the swing states to try to link that Trump is God's candidate.
Yeah, so this is why I was like so distraught when Constance was telling me this, because I'm like, okay, they're creating a dialectical pole. You've got one half of the right. I mean, it's not half, but it's a pole, dialectical pole. But you've got these people on the right who think Trump is like a deified figure. He's somehow like a saint or an angel messenger from God. And then you've got the people on the other side of the right who are these counter theosophists. There are people like Constance and her followers who think he's the Antichrist. And I'm like, this is
Mhm,
perfect for the people of the UN who want to divide and rule, to create this splinter. They've now splintered and they've done this in so many ways, but this is
mhm,
one example of splintering the right so that they can create this competing faction.
mhm.
And yeah, you've got these people who think he's the Antichrist, and now you've got these people who think he's somehow God, or like a vehicle
He's an
from God.
avatar of Michael the
Yeah.
Archangel, right?
Yes. And
Who
now
is
you have people roping him into saying the prayer.
right.
which for the Theosophists is a symbol of Satan, but it's their god.
Right. So
And didn't General Flynn read the prayer from Elizabeth Clare Prophet? Yes.
yes, yes, he did. Oh my
Mhm.
gosh, I forgot about her.
Yes.
Get your popcorn. This is so crazy. Okay,
Yes.
so they say using the creative imagination, project a lighted seed of will energy into the heart of the thought form under construction on sustainable development for all in connection with the summit of the future. See myriad streams of living will energy connected to it by co-workers around the world. So the co-workers are the esoteric
Yeah.
people.
The love and light, the goodwill workers, the goodwill servers, the ones
Hmm.
who go to that festival every year. I
Hmm.
think it's every 7 years they do the Goodwill Festival. Yeah.
Hmm. So do you think this invocation of Michael has anything to do with this
With
prayer?
yeah, I do.
Okay, I do too.
Yeah, I
Let's
do.
continue. So they said reflect for a few minutes on the seed thought, and it's funny that they're making thought forms.
Mm,
So thought forms, tulpas, egregors, they call them. So these are just things that they think that can come into reality just by giving it attention. And there's some truth to this because you can create a person
yeah,
to an egregor by thinking about them, talking about them, posting them, sharing them.
yeah,
Like they can just get inflated, inflated, inflated into a giant tulpa,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
And it's the attention that makes them grow.
Yes.
So they said human planning today is one of the first indications of the emergence of the will aspect. And the
And by
guarantee,
will, I'm sorry
yeah.
to cut you off, but I do want to address that because will, this is like Nietzschean will to power. This is uh, a
Selima.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's what they're believing that they're the Ubermensch, right? They're creating this class of people who will be spiritually evolved. Everybody else, so they talk about, and they like I brought up Bruce Lipton, and he's one of these like evolutionary leaders who believes we evolve or we die, right? So they talk about how they're not specifically Darwinian because Darwin believed in natural selection. They don't like natural selection because it breeds competition, individuality. And of course, we talked about this on the past two shows with the whole notion of what they're doing is to usher in the age of Aquarius, which is
Right.
moving out of Pisces, which is individualism. They're moving into the Aquarian collective. And they believe that they are the Psychian network. This is a Maslowian term, but it's relevant because Maslow influenced people like Barbara Marx Hubbard, who created the Conscious Evolution Foundation, which was funded by the Rockefellers, the Center for Integral Wisdom, also all of these organizations. But this idea of conscious evolution is where, and it's very much tied to Theosophy because they believe that they will spiritually evolve and they're going to collectively spiritually evolve. And everybody who doesn't, those who are left behind, if you will, they just will no longer cease to be.
They'll
So
be
they can't.
recycled
Yes.
into cosmic energy,
Yes.
right? Doesn't
Correct.
sound that bad.
Uh,
Maybe FEMA will come and recycle you.
yeah.
So, oh, we were talking about triangles, and then the second part of the prayer was talking about within the square and
Hmm.
serve my fellow men. So, what do you make of that? That is super Masonic, right? Because all Masons say they start out as a rough ashlar or a cube or a stone that needs, working on chiseling,
Yeah.
and they become the perfect ashlar, the cube, the square. Uh, is obviously one of the working tools of
Mhm.
Freemasonry, the compass and square. That's the bottom, the ruler
Yeah.
thing, right? Alchemical also, square is masculine. And
And
there's mystical things about, squaring the circle and putting the triangle inside the circle and inside the square and all of that if you want to study alchemy. But yeah, it's super magical. It's Masonic. It's the Theosophical. It's all of these things. It's got Christian flavors.
Yes. Well, they do
right?
Christianese. So it's
Yeah,
all with the veneer of Christianese, which is designed to lure Christians in and to mislead them.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, and we talk about Chrislam sometimes, it's like you can be a Christian, but you're spiritually Islamic because you want to, oppress women and like do all these other crazy extreme measures that are not Christian at all.
Well, who runs the UN? It's mostly the Islamic order.
True.
Yeah, no, but nobody talks about that.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
they say visualize the pulsating nucleus of light at the heart of the thought form being fanned into a flame by the group gaze and see its radiation touching the consciousness of all participants at the summit.
Wow. So they're doing seances.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Hive mind Borg visualization rituals to create these thought forms and I don't even know, man. Like this gets so even for me. They say quietly sound the great invocation. Imagine hearing it being chanted by the worldwide group. As you do so, visualize the outpouring of light and love and power through the 5 planetary inlets. London, Darjeeling, I guess that's in India, New York, Tokyo, and Geneva. Ooh,
yep.
have you heard of these planetary inlets?
I don't think I have.
So I
Um,
I guess
yeah.
these are just cities with big groups of
Well, I think they're most of them are have UN headquarters though,
right, like so
right?
cities with the think tanks and the
Yeah.
okay.
But it's interesting. I didn't know that apparently the city of London runs the river of Thales runs through it, but that's also known as the river of Isis.
Oh, really? Well, that makes perfect sense.
I know. I didn't know that, but I was like,
Yeah,
oh, yeah, that makes sense.
I didn't either. Okay, so imagine all of these groups from Tokyo, Geneva, New York, London, Darjeeling, and all of this energy is flowing into the future at UN headquarters in New York. And then they have this prayer. Um, from the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into human minds. Let light descend on earth. And this light they're talking about is Lucifer,
Yes, the
right?
light bearer.
Yeah.
Yes.
From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into human hearts. May the coming one return to earth. So they are invoking a Messiah.
Yes. The Antichrist, Lord
Yeah.
Materia. Yeah.
So from the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide all little human wills, the purpose which the masters know and serve. So all of our little wills are turned towards their big goal, which is
Mm-hmm.
manifesting the Antichrist on Earth in New York City.
Yep.
From the center, which we call the human race, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells.
Yep. And there you have it.
Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Om, om, om. So it's also got your Eastern Hindu om, om, om.
Yes. So if I were like Hindu, a Buddhist, or, really just any of these Eastern practices that they've
Mhm.
appropriated, I mean, that's essentially what they've done, I would be very upset because they cherry pick, they take the elements of it and
Mhm.
they incorporate it to serve their telos. So they're not doing justice to, they make it sound like they love these Eastern religions, but they don't really because they've cherry picked the parts that serve their telos and they've completely misappropriated those religions. And
Mhm.
I'm not saying this as somebody who's a Hindu or a Buddhist, but if I were, I'd be actually very upset because they're not serving them.
Mm-mm. And
They're
like you pointed out, they always act like they're serving women. They're not.
no. Oh, no, I mean, so most of this pact is for the future. And it like this summit for the future that they did, they kept talking about that, how, we want to serve women and we have to include women. And there were some interviews with people where like someone who was on a climate justice board, something like that. I don't know the name of what the board she was, but it's something climate justice related. And she kept talking about what the really important thing that we need to understand is that the UN stands for women, and that women are going to be, we need to have women be leaders at the UN.
Mhm.
So, and I was like, really? So this the organization that supports like Sharia law is somehow going to be advocating for women.
Right. And don't UN troops get in troubles a lot for misconduct when they go into places? I mean,
Yes,
I've heard a lot of reports about SA and other things worse
yes,
by
I
UN.
have to. But somehow they're all for women. I guess maybe that's kind to women. I don't know.
So now we've got some thought leaders
Yes.
that have emerged. Um, and it just gets worse and worse. Like I guess I could say it, like JP
Yes. Uh-huh.
and RB
Right.
and
Yes.
his tidy
Uh,
whities
yes.
baptizing people.
Well, apparently that's what Christ consciousness is.
I mean, I went through that phase when I was young and we ate a bunch of mushrooms one summer and we were like baptizing each other in the kiddie pool. But that like that was on psychedelics, okay? That was not in a sober state of mind. Um but it's just so weird to
Well, they
see.
talk about that too, right? Because the psychedelics are, I mean, basically all of these mystery cults, they worship actually at the World Parliament of Religions. They've now included, I don't remember if it was in 2018 or 2023, but it's fairly recently, they incorporated the religion of ayahuasca to the
Hmm,
World Parliament of Religions.
okay.
And it's because all of these like psychedelic, so mushrooms would be included. I know they're more natural, but there's people like Peter Thiel who are working on synthetic variations of these things. So, and I don't know, I just can't help but when you start seeing mushrooms on children's clothing and
Mm,
furniture stores,
hmm
I'm sorry, this is not an organic movement, but
Not just cottage core, right?
yeah, I'm like, really, when did mushrooms become fashion statement? I'm sorry. Yeah, something's going on here. But they talk about how it's because when you take these psychedelics, then all boundaries and all distinctions become blurred and eradicated. And
Hmm
so they of course think they're closer to God.
hmm
Um, and they have all the gnosis because they've had this experience. They've been on this
Yes.
trip, and so for people who want to use, these means as they want to blur all these boundaries so that they can control you and do mind control experiments, it's a very useful tool.
hmm
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you've ever known somebody who does, psychedelics, like, or even for the first time they come out of it, they think they know everything,
Uh-huh.
right? Like they have
Yeah.
all the answers to everything in the universe, and now like my ego's destroyed, so I'm finally better than everyone else,
Yes.
right?
Every time. Yes.
Yeah. Uh,
And they usually had a bunch of orgies in the process too. Somehow that's always involved.
can't not have the orgies. Like that's the
Yeah.
point of the whole.
That's the thing. Yeah.
Like look at Diddy, right? It's all
Yeah.
about. And
Yes.
he's not the only one. So these are like dominoes, Diddy first and then Jay-Z and Beyonce and like boom, 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 boom,
Well, and
boom.
even in the political sphere, so now we're seeing all this like gay porn with Corey DeAngelis, right? So somehow the yeah, it's like the ancient tactics have not gone away. It's all the same. The pederasty is the tool for the blackmail, for the induction, for rituals and initiation rituals, sorry, and
hmm
of course for trauma-based mind control.
hmm And so people who were just in the academic sphere
Yes.
are pivoting. So they go from psychology,
Yes.
pop psychology,
Yes.
um, acting.
Yes.
And now these are the religious leaders up there with, Donald Trump and Tucker Carlson. And it's just like, how did these people pull out in front? And they're doing super goofy stuff. And they're not even, so in the case of like JP, he's not even a convert to anything.
No, but he has been groomed as a great false prophet.
Yeah.
Um, so I've done, shows on him and his organization and the ties, how they claim that they're going to be, a counter to the World Economic Forum, and very conveniently their funding is coming straight from the clients of the World Economic Forum. So essentially the same thing. Yeah, but somehow they're going to counter the World Economic Forum. But what was very concerning about it is he's using this, again, Christianese, this very Christian veneer, to smuggle in this esoteric messaging. And I went recently to hear him speak. This was before his latest book was released. It'd be great to get a deal where you're paid like hundreds of thousands of dollars for a book you haven't even written yet. It's a really great gig.
Yeah.
If you can get it,
Yeah.
it's great. Yeah. But he so I went mostly as reconnaissance. Like I was just kind of curious, what is he? And of course, this is the Wrestle with God tour, right?
Mhm, mhm,
Um, and in it, he does these very long, bloviating kind of pontification speeches. And I think it's very enticing for people because we live in soundbite society, and soundbite society, people don't spend a lot of time thinking. Most
mhm,
people don't read. Most people really don't even spend much time just with their own thoughts, let alone read and then process that. But thinking, like actually that process of thinking and sitting with your thoughts is how we form our own identity. So it's
mhm,
actually really integral to what it means to be human.
mhm,
And so we crave it. And I think much like somebody might go watch movies or listen to music so that you can have a visceral emotional experience that you might not have access to. I mean,
mhm,
some people don't allow themselves to just cry in public or to get really angry, or they have trouble accessing some of those, or even to feel, tremendous like ecstatic joy. Some people have trouble accessing those, and that's part of why we like entertainment, where we can allow ourselves to, in a dark theater, feel those things.
mhm,
And I think it's really similar. He's become that for intellectuals who don't have access
mhm.
to, deep thought process. So now vicariously, because they've listened to him bloviate for 5 minutes when he could have said something in 5 words,
Yeah.
feel like they've actually done this really deep, elaborate thought processes, but they haven't. They've just vicariously through their prophet. And when you listen to him speak, he sounds like he's being groomed to be a prophet. I think a false prophet, and he wears that two-faced suit. Uh, um,
He looks like the Joker.
yes,
Yeah, or yeah, like Two-Face.
Two-Face. And he
Totally.
talks about how he was split in half when he was in Russia in rehab. Um, and I don't know. I mean, I'm just gonna say I think he was MK Ultra, but I actually would take it a step further, and we can say I'm just crazy, making these wild theories. So just pin it on me. I'm cuckoo. But in the organization that is ARC, right? When you go all the way back, right, Legatum is funding it. And when you go look through the files, the funding files on Legatum, they started out as Prosperity UK 2016. That's their initial filing.
Mhm,
And what happened in 2016? 2016 was when he catapulted on the scene for arguing against Bill C-16 in Canada, which was,
mhm,
of course, the pronouns bill.
mhm,
And now this could all just be a coincidence, but I think it's very interesting that a professor gets catapulted to fame and becomes the figure of the quote unquote alt-right. That's what they labeled him. He's not even conservative, let
mhm,
alone alt-right. Like that's kind of just ludicrous to even think that. First of all, he's Canadian. I mean, Canadian conservatism is actually very different than what it would even mean in the United States if we were to even go based on ideology, and philosophical roots, which I don't think even apply here, but they labeled him as being, this crazy, wild alt-right figure. And there was this really looks like a whole media campaign around him.
Mhm.
And then people are watching his lectures, like his college lectures. You can't get most people to read a book. Now suddenly they're watching like year-long lectures from a psychology professor. So I don't think it's organic, but maybe it's just a crazy coincidence. And this organization that is now the primary funding source behind his Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. Yeah. So
There's just too many weird things about that. I mean, when he first started, he would go on like public access talking about like incels and red
yeah,
pill talking points, right?
yes,
So he's the literally wearing a fedora.
yes,
Okay.
yeah,
So he kind of is the granddaddy of the disenfranchised young male.
yep. And then who's his audience? Who
Them.
tells to clean their room? Yeah,
Yeah. So he's daddy.
yes,
Um, clean your room, bucko.
yep,
They all look up to him. Then he was like, but he was also pushing pharmaceuticals with his daughter there on Access Television.
yes,
And so he's kind of, I don't want to say fomenting, but definitely bringing this out of people that men are so lonely and women are so cold, and there's nothing that young men can do, and like kind of victimizing it a little bit.
yeah. Well, and he's also, I mean, people seem to forget he's like he worships Jung. He's like
Right.
a Jungian guru leader, right? Who's
Yeah.
now supposedly a Christian leader, which is strange. Jung actually said he wanted to overthrow Christianity. I mean, he was a Mithran. He worshipped the, god of Mithra.
Hmm.
And uh, and he talked also about psychedelic, trips as a conduit to, ascension. And this is who he talks about all the time. This is like his, hero is.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think it's, yeah. So to talk about him victimizing the people, I think it kind of makes sense. It's
And I know they're gonna say, no, he tries to help, like by telling them to clean their room and these other 12 stupid things. And you made a good point. Like he's the opposite of profound, because a profound person can take a really
complex,
complex idea and simplify it so a lot of people can understand it. What he does is the exact opposite. It takes something
exact
simple
opposite.
and like stretches it out and makes it super complex just to because he likes to hear himself talk.
Yes.
I don't want to be a hater, but I just see things like if you
Yes.
does that make sense? Like I love
Yes.
people, I love everyone in a Christ-like way, but I don't trust you.
No, I don't
Okay.
trust
I
them.
don't RB, JP, uh DT, all of these dudes, I don't trust them.
No,
Because I
I don't trust any of them. Yeah, so RB, yeah, he is very, very concerning. He is a former addict, right? And I think there is a tremendous amount of narcissism involved. I think with JB also, they're kind of raging narcissists, and they both were addicts. And there's a really great document. You can pull it off CIA.gov, but it's from mice to rascals. And this is about how they recruit assets.
Mhm,
So essentially change agents, which I would
mhm,
argue both of them qualify to be great change agents. And they talk about, so mice stands for money, ideology, coercion, and ego. And they were saying how after World War II, they realized that, they don't say this explicitly, but through my research, I really think that it came out of the um, War Office selection boards that were done at Tavistock. And this was like right after Operation Phoenix at Tavistock, where they restructured. And then they did they did these new testing kind of protocols to figure out how they could select their selection board members. And this became a new strategy for the OSS, like how they were, which became the CIA, and how they were going to recruit people and how they would pick their leaders. And they talk about it as like an intelligence test, but they say it wasn't really an intelligence test. And what I really think it was, when you listen to when you read their words, what they're really saying is like mental adaptability, which is
Mm.
great for a change agent, right? Somebody who can be groomed.
Mhm.
But anyway, they decided that rascals was a better term. And if I can remember correctly, I think rascals is reciprocity, authority, S is scarcity, and then L is liking, and the other S is for, I don't remember the other S. But anyway, it's all very similar. The C, sorry, it was again like coercion and compromise. So it's all very similar. Um, but the reason I brought it up is because I think they meet the profile for people who would be great change agents, and that document kind of lays out exactly what they're looking for.
Well, about 10 years ago, I wrote an article about Katy Perry and RB, and I remember back on the red carpet when she was acting weird and he was flashing her little things that say obey on it.
Okay.
I have a clip of that. And one of his shows had the logo of the X and the O, and I was like, well, that's pretty weird because I was really deep into Kenneth Grant at that time. Like, why is he using that as a symbol for his show?
Wow.
If you're interested in that, you can go to Rockfin, look for it's called Alistair Crowley and the Hidden God is the book that I did the book report on about the Mark of the Beast, which
Ugh.
also happened to be his TV show logo. Right?
Wow. The last one is social proof. Sorry. I just wanted
Oh,
to
sorry. Go ahead.
social. No, the last one is S, the last S is social.
Oh, oh, social proof. Okay.
Yeah.
And it's so hard because I don't want to discourage people's conversion, but at the
Right.
same time, I don't think you go from first becoming Christian to baptizing people within the span of a couple of months
And your whitey tighties.
and leading prayers in front of thousands of people. I mean, it's just not how you do things. Like I
No.
didn't properly catechize. Like I grew up Protestant, and it's a free for all,
Right,
right?
right,
Anybody can be a cult leader. Anybody can open a church and baptize and do all the goofy stuff. But that's when you start to have all of these weird ideas about what Christianity is. So like when you're catechized in the church, you figure out like, okay, we have all of these rules because of decorum, and so we know that people are sincere.
right,
So people don't just take this and run with it and start their own cult or whatever. Like we have protocols
right.
for decorum,
Yes,
right? And so people don't question, are you doing this? Because I don't if it takes you a couple years to join and you have to learn like humility and then you have to go through the period where you don't teach because you're still learning,
right.
right?
Of
and
course, yeah.
and so me being we did that show about that OnlyFans girl Nala who went straight from OnlyFans to some kind of woman preacher and setting up a like content creation station for other girls to the pipeline of
Yes,
conversion. So it's just another money-making thing. So what I'm saying is within the church, there are ways that you can go about this so nobody questions if you're real or not, if
right.
this is goofy. You don't make Christianity look crazy.
They've done that. And
Yeah.
so many are being deceived by it. I mean, that's what's just really crazy to watch. And then the backlash against people who are warning, like, you hate Christianity or like you're anti, whatever. Like if you called out the Archangel Michael prayer reading, like you're anti-Catholic. It's like, no. First of all, the amount of Catholics I've talked to who said they've never read that prayer, like it's just not very typical. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. But it's not like something that is very familiar to them. And but suddenly, like Trump is reading it. I mean, it's
Is
it's a little
my
strange.
is Metatron Michael?
What?
Do you know Metatron, the New Age angel?
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not. No, I don't think I'm.
Metatron is Mich. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay, never mind. He says Metatron is not the same as Michael the Archangel. Okay.
Mm-mm. But here's another really interesting tidbit about
Oh wait, he is.
he is Metatron.
Well, it says in the Apocalypse of Zerubbabel, Metatron is not Enoch. He is identified as the Archangel Michael. So Metatron is a like a new age.
Yes. Okay. That's why it sounded familiar
Yeah.
because they think he's that Archangel Michael is essentially the Satan.
This is getting so crazy.
So I wanted to before I forget the Jim Fetzer,
Uh-huh.
like the Fetzer Institute. So
Uh-huh.
there was a big debate about the logo, and you can find this on the Wayback Machine. And the old logo actually had like the M and like wings.
Oh,
Um,
really?
yeah, so it's
Oh,
Archangel Michael, and Fetzer talked about how he channeled Archangel Michael. And he was saying that the importance of channeling the Archangel Michael was so they could usher in the age of Aquarius.
who used to channel Metatron? Santana.
Oh, that's right.
Remember?
Yes.
And they're
I
like,
didn't
where do you
put
get
that
your
together.
sick tunes from? And he's like, I channel Mike Metatron.
That's right. I did not put that together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been around for a little while.
That's
Uh,
what I was saying. This off has
yeah.
been like brewing for so long.
Yes.
I think roping Trump in is has been in the works for a really long time also.
And it really sucks because I see a lot of smart people on Twitter like really struggling, who are non-Christian and they're seeing all this and like, see, I told you guys this is so goofy, and then they're getting attacked, and I'm like, they're actually right.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know.
And the whole like Christ is King thing is kind of sus to me too, because you see people kind of just using this as a, of course Christ is King, but to use it in your like Twitter or whatever, I feel like it's just another tool.
It's agitprop. I mean, that's been intentionally woven into the vernacular to be agitprop. So it targets anybody who is not Christian, right? So this is to sow division.
Mm,
Um, and it's also I think they don't realize that, yes, Christians may view Christ as king, although I've never heard a Christian say this prior to 2 years ago.
mm,
They may have thought it, they may have lived their life that way,
mm.
but I didn't hear them parading that around. That wasn't like a thing, you know?
No.
Um, but who has been making that a thing? Well, maybe she's a daytime talk show host.
Yeah.
Her name might be Oprah. She's the same person who at the DNC said, Joy! Yeah. So she was also talking about joy. Um, there's a lot of
Oprah said that?
yes.
She said Christ is King?
Well, no, she said, "Oh, joy!"
Oh, oh, joy.
Right? Yeah, she was talking
Yeah.
about the joy campaign. But yeah, but she has said, yeah, she was talking about Christ consciousness
Mm,
on her show for like well over a decade. And she platformed every single one of these like new thought theosophical leaders. I mean, Deepak Chopra,
mhm,
the list is really long, and she would talk about Christ consciousness, and what they're talking about is not Christ. They're not talking about Jesus Christ. They're talking about Lord Maitreya or Buddha, Krishna. It's a world teacher.
mhm,
It's not. So that's just it. You have to understand whenever you hear anything from the UN, there's exoteric messaging that make love and light, and that sounds great. But what is the esoteric messaging? And they have workshops on this. The Arcane School says that, and in the words of Alice Bailey, they talk about we need to teach the esoteric teachings to the people who are consciously evolved, so their whole Psyche network will be trained in this esoteric messaging, but unfortunately the masses are being led astray.
it's so insidious
Yes. Yes.
because, and I feel like tinfoil hat conservatives, Christians are like the thirstiest group for
Yeah.
camaraderie because
Yes.
they're so niche
Yes.
that anybody that even says something close to what they agree with, they latch onto them, like Andrew
Yes.
Tate.
Yes. I
You
know.
know,
Well, a cult of personality. Yeah.
And they're like, oh, he's on our side. And I'm like, he's just using words that you like. Like, it's so frustrating. And
Yes, is a very, very frustrating. But I think as we're heading in, it's going to be, we have I do think the election is relevant, and we have well, I don't know how many weeks left. It's like a month.
mhm.
Um, and I think we have not even had our October surprise yet, but I think we're going to see a lot more of these types of splintering operations.
Shocks and splinters,
Yes,
right?
yes, that's I think exactly what we're going to see. Um, I hope people use some discernment to use the Christian word, but yeah, I'm not seeing a whole lot of it. I'm seeing a lot of reactionary behavior.
What frustrates me so much is like people can't see demons.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you literally can't see how bad this person is or whatever is controlling them
Yeah.
through them, and uh they love Barabbas. I don't know how to put it.
I don't know. So I do not think that Trump is like a deified figure, and I don't think he's a savior.
Mhm.
But he is the only person talking about defunding the UN. And
Okay.
yeah, and I know those are just words, but he did make motion in that direction in, when he was in office last. And the UN has repeatedly said that they are really afraid they can't survive another Trump administration. So there was a leaked video that Stephen Crowder got from someone at the UN talking about how they don't think they can survive another Trump administration. The reason for this is because the United States funds 27% of the UN.
Mm.
That's almost a third.
Hmm.
So that's a huge portion of their funding is coming straight from the United States. There was also a couple of videos I saw from some people, like Alex Newman was interviewing people he was in New York and he interviewed people at the UN. There were some others, and he asked, like, what are your thoughts on Trump? And they all said they're terrified. So again, it's not that I think he's like, I have a lot of issues with him, to be really candid.
Hmm.
Uh, but if we can get out of the UN, that's just like a huge monumental step in the right direction, in my opinion.
Yes. I say that all the time. We need to break up with the rest of the world and just worry about ourselves for a little
Yes.
bit. Right?
I mean, if you have children, right? If you have a family, you don't say, oh my goodness, I can't really feed my children, but invite the rest of the world over for dinner. No,
Hmm.
not that you don't want to feed the rest of the world if you could.
Hmm.
But if people are in need, of course you want to help them. But you would say, this is my family. I got to take care of them. I'm going to feed my children first.
Right.
Yeah. So maybe we could do that, like take care of our children here at home first.
Uh, Courtney, that makes too much sense.
I don't know. I know it's a crazy idea, but
You just need to meditate more and uh, envision your giant beam of light directing the wheel of Metatron. Right.
ah,
Yeah.
that's where I went wrong. I'm sorry. Yes.
Have you ever heard of Bashar?
No.
So he's this goofy, like, channeler of aliens.
Oh
And
boy.
we'll end on this because we've been going
Okay.
on. But I used to watch him when I believed in aliens, but now it's just funny to me. He sits there and he answers all your questions, and he's like, mecha leka hi, mecha honey ho. Not that, but he just like he channels the aliens and they answer all your questions. And he goes, um, I'm not permitted to tell you the future, but if you get a female president, then you will have full disclosure. If you get a male president, you will have nuclear war.
Oh.
So like, hmm.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I'm sure that they're having a field day with
So
that one.
fake aliens or fake World War III? Which one do you want?
Oh, I don't really want either one. Is there another option?
No,
Oh,
you have to have one.
well, I'm opting out.
I've never voted. Do you know that? I've
I
never.
do know that. That's crazy. So I'm concerned about that too, though. I understand, I support you've done this long before there was this in play, but I will say this. I am pretty sure there is a concerted active measure. Um, I can't prove it, but again, here I am with all the theories. But I've just seen so much evidence indicated, and some of the people who are fomenting this narrative, I actually do think are operatives, like maybe actual, seeing eye kind of operatives, we'll say.
Mhm, mhm,
Um, but and I personally know more people than I can count on both hands who have said they've heard some of these people and that they were going to vote for Trump, but
mhm,
they are not going to vote at all anymore.
mm,
There is a very concerted active measure effort to get people not to vote at all.
mhm,
This does not help. Who does it help? It helps Kamala, because
mhm,
every single one of the people who would have, this is why I say, like, it's not just a anti-conservative kind of an operation that's going on. What's happened is they've splintered, and there's this group where it's like the left and then there's everybody else. Because there are a lot of people who are not, they're not conservative, they're not right wing, but they're just like the left has gone crazy. I don't think
mhm,
they've always been crazy, but that's how they make sense of it. They're like, the left has gone crazy. I don't want to be a part of that. But the people who run these types of operations are very clever, and they recognize that. And so, of course, they in part created it, because we saw this back 4 years ago, right? There was this anybody who didn't go along with the narrative, in some of the health arena, if you
mhm,
will,
mhm,
you were suddenly labeled right wing. And a lot of these people were
mm,
not right wing. I mean,
mhm,
actually, people who were against being forced to take certain things, historically, were actually left leaning. But now they were able to put this new banner, new label on them, and put them into a new box. And that box becomes much more suggestible to new marketing. And that's what we're seeing now. And so, all this to say, I am actually very concerned about this measure that's going on, that's convincing a lot of people not to vote at all, because
mhm.
most of those people would have voted for Trump. And again, I say this as somebody who has a lot of issues with Trump, but I really feel like it may be a lesser of two evils kind of thing, but I think he's a much better option right now. And if he doesn't win, unfortunately, we're not in a situation where we have another option. It's going to be Kamala and Malls, and I think they're going to head us down a bad path really quickly.
Well, whatever can stop the hemorrhaging of the immigration.
Well, it's not going to be
It's
Kamala
not
and
them.
Malls.
Yeah, it's
It's
not them.
not them. The borders are. She's not going to do it. No. So yeah, we need that. So
Well, thank you for coming and gossiping with me about UN and all these characters that we are subject to. It's like a lot of these people, everything I know about them is against my will. I'm like, I wish I never heard of them. But
me too.
um, we are praying for the people in North Carolina and East
Uh,
Tennessee. This is worse than anybody actually realizes, because the mainstream media is not reporting in at all. Everything I learned from TikTok. And
yes. Yep.
we send all of our prayers to them, not the UN prayers, the actual ones.
No, no, yeah. Not the inverted prayers.
Yeah, and so thank you for coming on my show. I know you are so busy, but we always love seeing you, and you always know so much about any topic I want to go down. You are like right there with me, so we really appreciate it. Courtenay Turner, and tell us what's next and where we can find you.
Well, what is next? We've got a lot of shows coming out, and I'm speaking next weekend in New Orleans. Uh, yeah, which I should not be doing because I'm getting married in 3 weeks, and I have a lot to do for that. But
Expect nothing less from you, Courtenay. I, you probably have something booked like the day before and the day after,
I
right?
do, I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I have 15 shows in the next like 2 weeks. But yeah, so I'm speaking, and it's actually MAGAFest, and I do tell them actually, because I was very concerned about that. I was like, I'm not really like, like a rah-rah MAGA person, because I think the MAGA has been really co-opted as well. Unfortunately, a lot of them I think are some of the people who are behind, the same Q group, who are now doing this Archangel
Mm.
Michael thing. Uh,
Mm.
so I think there's a lot of overlap there, but I told them that I definitely support him over the alternative, and I think that there's yeah, there's a lot of reasons why historically, if we just look through the people who want to control us versus the people who want to preserve free will, and he's a better option. So they were very supportive of that. And so I will be speaking to New Orleans this weekend. And yeah, and we have a bunch of good shows coming out and lined up. And so, yeah. And you can find me at CourtenayTurner.com. I spell my name like Courtenay, though. So it's CourtenayTurner.com.
Okay. Well, go over there to CourtenayTurner.com, and I was there a couple weeks ago, and she's got all the best people on this. What do we call it? Alt media, independent media.
What are you calling? What are we calling? What is the umbrella you're
You have
trying to
all the best
label?
guests from this milieu of.
Yeah, I mean, I would call it like independent media, but not indie. I label indie media
Uh-huh.
differently than
Oh,
independent.
okay. Okay.
So I feel like indie media has been co-opted.
Right.
So, but independent, truly independent. I mean, I bring people from various different spheres. I think sometimes like so many things have been co-opted that you just have to use discernment, and we learn from whatever we can learn from. Like sometimes we learn the best things even from like the wrong things, right? A broken
Right.
clock is right twice a day. That doesn't mean it's so those times when it's right, you have to acknowledge it's right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for coming, and everybody stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you.